Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
The worst talent available. That's what we are. Okay, John. This story that came out yesterday, this is sort of the deal. I don't know if this is an offshoot of the crazy Netflix special they did where they did the roast of Tom Brady. They did it live. You know what I'm talking about, over the weekend?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I heard there was a lot of controversy about this.
Well, the interesting thing that came out was I forgot about this story, that Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, and matter of fact, there was a reference in the roast about him getting a massage, which is a whole other story. But if you know the whole crazy thing about that, okay. Yeah. This bizarre story of him and Putin and the Super Bowl championship ring. Do you know this weird story?
I don't know this story. No.
Okay, the year I believe was 2005. For some reason, Robert Kraft is in Russia and he's meeting with Vladimir Putin. And Vladimir Putin noticed that he has the Super Bowl ring on his hand. And he asks, I guess, through his interpreter, Robert Kraft, if he can take a look at it. So Kraft takes the Super Bowl ring off his hand and hands it to Putin. And Putin never gives it back. Putin puts it in his coat pocket. And Robert Kraft is like, okay, what do I do? And then apparently this turned into a diplomatic hubbub because of the fact that the Bush administration, which was in power at the time, George W. Bush, essentially told Robert Kraft, you're not going to like what we're going to tell you, but just kiss that ring goodbye. And to this day, the ring is still supposedly in possession of Vladimir Putin. And
is it a cultural thing? Like, was there some kind of misinterpretation there? Like, if you hand someone a gift in that culture, is it considered, like, where's the miscommunication there? Or was Putin just being a jerk?
I think that probably maybe a little bit of all of the above, maybe a little bit more of the latter than the former. But the idea being that he's made off with, first off, the dollar value of one of these rings is, think about it, if you were to recreate the ring today, it's worth tens of thousands of dollars because of the gold and all the diamonds and the stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
And secondly, this is Robert Kraft's championship ring. Now, he's got, 7 of them or some crazy things like that. But still, once again, watch the Pawn Stars. If this ring were ever to be, end up at the Silver and Gold Pawn Shop. By the way, have I ever told you I was actually there at the Silver and Gold Pawn Shop in Las Vegas?
No, you haven't told me that.
It's very disappointing. It's not what you think it is. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Once again, it would be worth many times its actual, appraised value because of the word that I learned from the Pawn Star guys, the provenance, the fact that this was the ring that Robert Kraft had that somehow or another Vladimir Putin got a hold of, and then it ended up at the gold and silver or silver and gold pawn shop in Las Vegas, and they now want $250,000 for it, $10 million the whole bit. So apparently, I don't know if this came out at the roast, apparently Robert Kraft has crafted some message to Mr. Putin, said, give me my effing ring back, essentially in so many words. And now,
wow. Now, is he doing that kind of as a political statement, or is he being sincere, or is it like another all of the above?
I'll dig up the story and send it to you. I get the impression that Kraft is sort of ticked off at the federal government because of the fact that, first off, they told him just forget about it. And I think it's one of those things that, think about it. If you're somebody like Kraft and you're a multi-billionaire and you have one of the most successful NFL teams in history, and you got all the money in the world and you can fly here, you got corporate jets, and you can do anything you want, certain things mean more to you than the average guy. And to the point where You hear about some of these rich people that have strange things that they covet more than anything in their life. And for some reason, matter of fact, there's an interesting story about this guy I know who's a very successful YouTuber and used to be a radio guy for a while, and talked about when he was 9 years old, he talked his dad into going down to a Chevy dealership to look at the new 1988 Corvette, and he fell in love with this Corvette that was on the showroom floor at the Chevy dealer someplace down in Tennessee or someplace like that, and the sales guy actually let him sit in the Corvette, and he said from that moment on he was a Corvette freak, and he knew his life he was going to own Corvettes. Well, long story made short, he goes on his radio show one day and says, and it was a 35th anniversary Corvette, which made it more importantly, he says, this is what I want. He tells the whole story. I fell in love with this car. I don't care what it costs. I want one just like it. So someone texted him and says, guess what? I'm almost positive your exact car that you fawned over from this dealership back in 1988 is sitting on a used car lot in Nashville. So he calls up the car lot, and sure enough, they trace, I'm going to use this word again, the provenance of this car. It was the very same car that he sat in to the car dealership, in 1988, in 88 when it was new, and he was 9 years old. And he gets the sales guy on the phone, and he says, I don't care what the number is. Give me a number. I will PayPal you the money right now, and I will send over a transport truck later today to pick it up. And sure enough, he spent, once again, this is a guy that go out and buy a new Ferrari. This guy's loaded now. He's very successful, and he's a comedian. He does all sorts of crazy stuff. They call him Rabbit, for those of you who know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But once again, that Corvette was special to him because he sat in it when he was 8 years old, and that Corvette changed his mind about the direction of his life, and he became a used car dealer and owned car lots, still owns car lots, stuff like that. And maybe it's the same thing with Robert Kraft and this Super Bowl.
Yeah,
ring.
I mean, well, it's certainly a special story, right? And how cool would it be if he actually got it back from Putin?
I don't know.
And wouldn't you think if you were close to Putin? I mean, Putin sat down with Tucker Carlson and gave a dissertation on the history of the region and why he feels the way he did, like 3 or 4 hour conversation that they had. If you're part of Putin's team, wouldn't you say, listen, our favorability has gone up X percent in the United States. Here's something that might help. Show that you're human and give the ring back.
Well, you would.
That's what I would recommend.
Well, yeah, but see, once again, the government's going to intervene with this, and the government's going to say, well, we don't have, our diplomatic, I guess it would be now they talk about the ties between the United States and China are very, tense and stuff like that. I don't know. It's just weird stuff. Okay. One of the classic pictures, and once again, me being a guy who does a lot of photography, and I still say, even though video is cool and I love video, but there's something about a still photo that just freezes everything in time. There's a classic picture that has made the story, made the news. I don't know if you've seen this or not. The Sunday morning, a preacher in Pennsylvania was giving his sermon. A guy walked into the church, walked up the aisle, pulled out a gun, pointed it at the preacher no more than 10 feet away from him, and pulled the trigger, and nothing happened. And somebody in the congregation has a picture of this guy standing in front of the pastor. The pastor's up in a little elevated little area, 2-3 steps up, and this guy standing with the gun, and you can clearly see it is aimed right at the pastor, and the pastor is like putting his hands up like to defend himself. The gun malfunctions, and one of the parishioners tackles him and gets the gun away from him. I'm going like, this is crazy stuff. And the story is, they have no idea why the guy did this. He does not attend this church. He just was down the street on Sunday morning and just walked into church and decided he's going to shoot the pastor. I mean, how bizarre is this weird stuff?
Yeah, that's very weird, Brad. I hadn't heard that story.
Well,
and we don't know anything about. Now, I'm sure both sides of the gun debate are weighing in on this, right?
Yeah, right. Okay, here's the Maxine Waters story. And she is still a Representative Maxine Waters, Democrat from California. Right, here we go. Warned that the right-wing organizations connected to Trump are, quote, training up in the hills somewhere, unquote, to attack Biden if Biden wins the election in November. This is Maxine Waters. She's saying...
Now, what hill is that? I mean, does she give a location? Like, is it in Franklin? Is it near the Kraft transmitter, Brad? Is that actually, instead of soldering Moffats or former pitcher Randy Moffat, were you actually training up in the hill?
They're MOSFETs, which stands for metal.
MOSFETs, okay. Not to be confused with misfits, which is an entirely different category. Go ahead, Brad.
This is the nerd in me. Metal oxide silicon field effect transistors. That's what MOSFETs are, okay? No, her quote is, training up in the hills somewhere. She goes on to say that, quote, we better be careful about what he could do. She's talking about Trump. She also suggests that Biden and the Justice Department get involved in preemptively stopping right-wing violence. Now, let's think about this for a minute. What have we seen recently over the last couple of weeks? Would you say the campus protesters have been right-wing violence? Or would you say...
Yeah, they're right-wingers, but all they do is talk about cutting taxes
right.
and reducing the size and scope of government. They're freedom fighters.
Right, they're freedom fighters. She says, here's a quote from her. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask the Justice Department and I'm going to ask the president to tell us what they are going to do to protect this country against violence if Biden loses, she remarked. No, hold on a minute now. If Biden loses, so why would the right-wing people be protesting if Biden loses? If Biden wins, the right-wing people are going to go, yeah, we got our Trump
sure
back.
That quote is correct if Biden loses?
I'm reading it right here. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. This is in quotes. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask the Justice Department, and I'm going to ask the president to tell us what they are going to do, this country, against violence if Biden loses, she remarked. Now, what's sort of crazy about this whole crazy thing is, have you heard this latest quote from Biden where he's saying, and I can't find it, I've heard it on a couple different radio stations, and where he gets this thing backwards, he's doing some kind of a stump speech, and he's essentially saying that 91% of the American public had their taxes raised by his administration, and
he got it wrong.
He got it backwards.
Yeah.
In other words, the idea is he's saying, instead of, he's saying the rich got a tax break. But it's some bizarre, weird quote. I think if I find it. And the other interesting thing about it is this has gotten out. There's all these Washington insiders. There's a couple things. First off, Biden can no longer use the big set of steps to Air Force One. You know this crazy story?
Yeah, I do.
There's a second set of steps that goes into the bottom of the airplane, which is, I believe, on the back side of the plane, which is used for the Secret Service guys to get out of the plane so they can get out of the plane ahead of the president when they land and stuff like that. So those are the things he uses now. Second story is he no longer is walking. I've already seen the video of this. It's sort of interesting. He's no longer walking by himself from Marine One helicopter as it lands on the grounds of the White House, back and forth from the White House to Marine One. He's no longer walking by himself. He's now surrounded by his aides, and supposedly they're putting up a visual fence so that you can't see how badly he's walking. And the third weird story about this is that they have said that they have trimmed all of his speeches, and all of his speeches now will be no more than 5 minutes long.
Well, but did you see the video where he said something about how he deserved 4 more years, and then he said the word pause? Did you see that clip?
Right. It's the classic Ron Burgundy line where, if you know the movie,
just read the teleprompter.
Where the running story is, Ron will read anything that's in the teleprompter, and he has no recollection of saying, in other words, he's just a machine. He's just reading stuff off the teleprompter. He has no idea what the context, the whole bit. And they changed the teleprompter, and his sign-off line was, hey, that's all from here. Stay classy, San Diego. Isn't that what it is? Stay classy, San Diego.
Yeah, stay classy, San Diego.
And instead, they put in the prompter, he's finishing his newscast, and he says, and F you, San Diego. And he gets up from the anchor desk, and everybody's like appalled, like, oh my God, I can't believe it just said that, because he had no recollection of reading the words, because he's just a robot. He's just reading stuff off the teleprompter. So, and that's like Joe. Now, the good thing is, do you think they could pull an FDR and take him to a Nationals game and have him throw the first pitch, and they're actually holding him up? Remember, like they did with FDR, nobody can know he's actually in a wheelchair and he can't walk. Let's just stand real close to him. See, there's a line in the sand. which was created by, and you and I have talked about this before. I don't know if this is being taught in journalism classes right now, but it should be taught. It's the Gary Hart lesson. You know the Gary Hart lesson?
Yeah, the old monkey business line.
Right. The Gary Hart lesson was Gary Hart was running for president, and he was being questioned about, there were rumors that he was having a fling with some young woman that was not his wife, and he got very upset at a press conference, and I think he blurted out something to the effect that I might be able to even find the quote. He says, I'm not doing that, and if you don't believe me, just follow me. So once again, some of the reporters, I think from the Miami Herald and a couple other papers, said, okay, fine, we'll just follow him. And they did, and they caught him. And it's to the point where it's like, okay, don't think. But see, some people say that was the line of demarcation in journalism, because if you go back into the early 60s, most reporters knew that JFK had flings with several women and was cavorting in the, supposedly the stories are thick and heavy about the fact that he was having an affair with young women in the swimming pool at the White House, which was an indoor swimming pool, and all this other crazy stuff. And the reporters were like, well, we just don't talk about that. We don't report that kind of stuff. That's his personal life. Nowadays, nobody cares. Nowadays, now, except for if it's a Democrat and the democratically led press, remember by NPR, remember by Yuri Berliner, who, what did he say? 42 of the top editors are Democrats, are registered Democrats. And then when they try to walk that back, I think it was Aisha Roscoe, who is the weekend gal on she does the Sundays on NPR.
Yeah.
She comes out and she says, well, I did my research, and yeah, there are 42 registered Democrats, but there are also 11 registered independents. And what's missing? No registered Republicans, right? So what does that tell you about NPR?
Yeah, but hey, they could be independents though, Brad. You don't know that.
Now, John, last thing. I did a video yesterday, and we went over this yesterday, that I walked in St. Charles, and I need you to decode that video for me. What exactly was I doing as I was walking along the sidewalks in downtown St. Charles? Because the problem I had yesterday, I had a problem with John trying to decode the Sophie Shores, which that sounds that sounds like a bar or something. Hey, I'll meet you at Sophie Shores. Be there at 5:00. Oh yeah, great.
Yeah, it's right on the water.
Right,
Brad, you were promoting BJ Show.video. No, BJ Show. Tell me what the domain that redirects to YouTube is.
John, you're disappointing me, because you're supposedly the expert at decoding these videos. It was a secret message where I was telling people if they wanted to watch our videos, all they had to do was to find our YouTube channel, is go to BJShow.video, and it takes you
BJShow.video, and that redirects people to the YouTube page. For people who haven't bookmarked it already,
right,
you can go to BJShow.video.
Right, it's right there, and you can watch the Sophie Shore video, which is now the #1 video we've ever had up on there, and you can ask the question, John, please explain this to me. I don't understand it. And John,
I don't know though, Brad. I think some people actually read the captions. I think some people scroll down and they invest 15 seconds in reading the caption. But for those who don't, they can always ask me about it, Brad.
There's two guys on this show, Brad and John. John is the WashU graduate. He's a very smart guy. Brad is the North County guy who took too many dips in Coldwater Creek and has 5 concussions and has all sorts of crazy, weird maladies, which nobody can figure out, and that's the difference. And he's the guy, I'm the guy still striving for triple digits in IQ. That's the difference in this show, right?
I ate way more lead paint than you do as a child, Brad. I will compete with you on that. And we both turned out just fine, didn't we? And tomorrow we're going to play a lyrics game, and you are going to show how intelligent you are, Brad. You batted 700 last time.
Okay, who's the person we're going to be dissecting tomorrow?
I don't know. People should follow us, though, on social media, because I'm going to put a teaser out at 6 p.m. today, Brad.
Are we doing Taylor Swift again?
We're doing Taylor Swift, and we're doing the Tortured Politicians Department, yes?
Okay. John, have a good day.
You too. See you guys tomorrow.
Oh, hey, one last thing. Expo, Small Business Expo. The St. Louis Business Expo is out at the Convention Center today. I'll be set up with the booth. Shelley might be there. Don't know if she's going to show up or not. I for sure will be there. If you're out and about, it's a great expo. It's free. It's at the Convention Center, which is on the lower level out there right off of 70 in Convention Center Plaza. 11 till 5. Stop by, say hi if you're in the neighborhood. Okay?
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?